Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible stories from the Ramayana, how the great River Ganga was brought down to earth. Now, this isn't just a myth. It's really a monumental story about perseverance, about faith, and, believe it or not, an absolutely astonishing feat of ancient engineering. So let's just start with the central, kind of mind-boggling question here. How could one person possibly bring an entire river down from the heavens to the earth? It sounds completely impossible, doesn't it? And that's exactly what makes this ancient story so compelling. Okay, before we get into the nitty-gritty, it's really important to understand how the story is told. The Ramayana itself calls it a purvavritam katha yuktam, which basically means a historical truth that's been wrapped in the form of a story. So our goal here is to peel back both of those layers, to really appreciate the beautiful story, and also to try and uncover the real-world event it's describing. So why was this such a big deal? Well, the whole story kicks off because of a massive crisis. We're talking about a severe, generations-long drought that was pushing an entire kingdom right to the edge of collapse. And listen, this was no simple problem to solve. Just look at this timeline. For 4 straight generations, powerful kings tried to fix this water crisis, and every single one of them failed. It began with King Sagar, then his grandson Anshuman, and after him, King Dilip. Each of them dedicated their life's work to this, but none of them could crack it. It just shows you how enormous this challenge really was. And this is where the Katha Yuktam, the storytelling part, adds this whole other layer. According to the legend, King Sagar had 60,000 sons who were cursed and turned into ash. Their salvation, their final rites, could only happen if the sacred waters of the Ganga washed over them. So the stakes here weren't just about survival, they were deeply spiritual. And that brings us to our hero. So after 3 generations of failure, the throne goes to King Bhagiratha. But instead of just ruling, he does something incredible. He basically hands over the day-to-day running of the kingdom to his ministers and dedicates his entire life to finishing this one impossible task his ancestors couldn't. Bhagiratha's commitment is described as a core tapasya. Now, this wasn't about him sitting in his palace and signing orders. No, we are talking about years and years of personal sacrifice, intense study, and just grueling physical effort. He took it upon himself to solve this, an effort so profound it would literally become the stuff of legends. So what was the actual practical problem he was trying to solve? Well, he was facing 2 gigantic challenges. First, just the logistics of it. How do you even get that much water down from the high Himalayas? And second, and this was maybe even more important, how do you control the incredible destructive force of that water so it doesn't just destroy the very land you're trying to save? This was a massive environmental and engineering puzzle. Okay, let's dive into the technical side of things, because this is where that mix of myth and reality becomes truly brilliant. Just look at the sheer scale of the stop. This chart here shows the Ganga starting up at Gangotri, at over 3,000 meters. By the time it gets to Hardwar, which is only 138 kilometers away, it's down to about 300 meters. I mean, that is a staggering drop in a super short distance. Can you even imagine the raw, incredible power of that much water falling that fast? And this is where the story gives us this beautiful, poetic solution. The text says that the earth itself just couldn't handle the force of Ganga's fall. So Lord Shiva steps in, and he catches the entire raging river in his matted hair, breaking its force and saving the world. But what does that actually mean from an engineering point of view? Here it is. This is the brilliant part. Shiva's hair is the perfect metaphor for the engineering solution. As you see here, Bhagirath didn't try to bring the river down in one giant destructive waterfall. First, he divided the flow into countless smaller channels. Then, these little streams could cascade down the mountainsides, which dissipated all that energy. And finally, a system was designed to collect them all back into a single river at the bottom. That network of channels, that was Shiva's hair, taming the river. But, getting the water down the mountain was really only half the battle. The next phase of this project turned out to be just as difficult. So the myth says that after Shiva caught the Ganga, the river got lost in his hair for years. Well, what's the practical reality of that? Once the water was split into all those different streams, figuring out how to collect them all back into a single unified river at the bottom was a huge challenge. For years, the whole project was basically stuck at this stage.
And here we go again with another brilliant mix of myth and reality. When the project stalled, a sage named Rishi Janu stepped in. The myth is pretty wild. It says he got angry and just drank the entire river, only letting it out of his ear after Bhagirath begged him. But the likely reality? Rishi Janu was probably a brilliant engineer who suggested a critical change to the canal design, a tweak to the flow that finally solved the problem of bringing all the streams back together.
And the results of all this work? Well, Valmiki's ancient description of the river's flow is just incredible. He describes it exactly as you see here, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, twisting and turning, sometimes rising up and then crashing back down. I mean, anyone who's ever been whitewater rafting near Rishikesh knows that this description, which is thousands of years old, is still spot on today.
You see, the completion of this unbelievable project left a legacy that is still very much alive today, in the culture, in the language, and in the environment of India.
Bhagirath's effort was so legendary that even today in India, any colossal, almost impossible task that requires incredible perseverance is called a Bhagirath Prayas, a Bhagirath-like effort. His name has literally become a synonym for sticking with a monumental task. Even the river's own names tell its story. As you can see, it's called Bhagirathi to honor King Bhagiratha, and it's also known as Jahannvi, recognizing the crucial contribution of Rishi Jahanu. The history is baked right into the language we still use today. And for me, this might be the most incredible part of all, the ecological continuity. In his text, Valmiki described this brand new river as being full of life, fish, turtles, and these creatures he called Shishumara. Well, guess what? Those Shishumara are the Gangetic dolphins that, amazingly, still swim in the river today. It's a direct living link to an ecosystem that was described thousands of years ago. You know, in the Ramayana, after the sage Vishwamitra recounts this whole grand epic to Ram and Lakshman, he simply says, "While telling the story, it has become midnight. Let us sleep now." It's just a beautiful, humble reminder that, at its heart, this grand tale of engineering and faith is also just a timeless story, passed down from one generation to the next.